going to discuss the Scorpion unit in this panel. Here to discuss, retired Los Angeles Police Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey, Captain Ron Johnson, a former incident commander in Ferguson, Missouri, and Dr. Jeff Warren, a member of the Memphis City Council. Dr. Warren, you saw portions of the videos of Tyre Nichols' arrest just this afternoon, and I know we're all sort of bracing, those who haven't seen it, bracing to see it. How do you feel after what you saw?
Pretty much like I thought I'd feel before I went to look at it. Just incredibly saddened and disheartened, much like all of Memphis is feeling about right now. It's just, I heard about this case before it got any national attention from a friend of Tyre's who called me and said, look, Dr. Warren, something's very wrong here. You need to make sure that it's investigated. And I think that our police department and our DA have gone out of their way to be transparent and to make sure that we can try to get justice served for Tyre and his family.
Yeah, the police chief there in Memphis, C.J. Davis, said the video showing the beating of Tyre Nichols is as bad, if not worse, than Rodney King in 1992. How do you prepare yourself and your community to see the full extent of what happened?
I think everyone just needs to know it's horrific. We've had a lot of horrific things happen here in Memphis. We're the capital of the Deep South, so we had lynchings here for decades and years. We were where Martin Luther King was assassinated. So, I mean, we as a community are used to grieving, unfortunately, in these horrible situations, which in my mind, sort of point to where we still have sort of situational or we have societal racism that make it okay for us to be able to harm and hurt young black men. And here we had black men doing that. So it's sort of like, it's different. If a white man had been doing this, you'd say, well, this person should have just complied with the officers. We're not hearing that now, but it's the same sort of excuses we make for not having our systems try to address this specifically. And in Tennessee, we can't even talk about critical race theory. It's been made illegal by our state legislature.
Okay, so I'm going to talk actually about the point you just raised, and I'm going to go to Sergeant Dorsey on this. One of Nichols' family, Don Lemon actually asked the chief about the role of race in this incident. And as we know, 5 black officers, a black victim in your predominantly black community there in Memphis, Tennessee. I want to listen to her response, then talk about on the other end, Sergeant Dorsey.
It takes off the table that issues and problems in law enforcement is about race, and it is not. It's about human dignity, integrity, accountability, and the duty to protect our community.
What do you make of that, Sergeant Dorsey?
Well, we can't take race off the table because certainly race plays a part in this, but I've often said that, these officers that we see, that we're going to see on this video are much like all the others. They're drunk with power. These are black men who now bleed blue, something I never did, who have bought into the system, who are locked into that police culture. And once they stopped this young man and engaged him, they realized that they had gone far too far and then began to think about how to manufacture probable cause for this detention. So they came up with reckless driving. He was able to get away briefly after having been maced, according to reports. And then they catch him again and do what officers do sometimes at the end of a foot pursuit. They punish you. This wasn't about compliance. This wasn't about taking him into custody, clearly, because they spent 3 minutes, according to reports, beating Mr. Nichols unmercifully. And so I think these are officers who are drunk with power. These are young officers who probably had no business on a specialized unit like the Scorpion team. And the name alone gives me reason for pause. Scorpion? Why would you want to call yourself that? And so I agree, this unit needs to be disbanded immediately. And those officers and everyone they've touched in their career needs to be looked at.
Ron, I want to get your reaction to something else we heard from Chief Davis about the officers involved in this confrontation. Let's listen.
What I saw in this video was more of a groupthink sort of mentality. A groupthink, and no one took a step to intercept or, intervene. And that's why the charges are as severe as they are.
And after the death of George Floyd, we should know many police departments implemented these policies that if an officer witnesses anything that's against policy, that where there is wrongdoing, they should step in and do something. Clearly, that didn't happen in this case. What do you think about this groupthink mentality that we just heard from the chief?
Well, I think she's absolutely right. And I think when we've talked about should this unit be disbanded or suspended, I think that answer is yes, because the chief has even said there's groupthink there. And so there's groupthink between these five. Apparently, there were at least up to 10 officers there who did not intervene. And so there seems to be that groupthink. And this is a cultural issue that must be addressed. You know, one thing that I talk about from a consulting standpoint is we have to teach a leadership at the lowest levels. So when we have situations like this, someone will step up and be a leader and have responsibility.
How do you
And
combat?
so, you know,
Yeah,
but
just to follow up on that, I mean, how do you combat groupthink in police departments?
well, I think one thing you have to do when you have a unit like this and you have these young officers, you have to make sure you have a seasoned officer there that's out there monitoring that and supervising that and making sure things are being done in a proper way. You have to have alerts. You have to have alerts on how many incidents officers have had as far as use of force. And so you have these alerts that tell you that. You have to monitor these units and look at their arrests. When they're making arrests that involve use of force, you have to review those. And I think you have to have these conversations, but you talk about leadership and responsibility. It can't just be something that's written in a document. It's be something that's actually a part of your strategy and your mission, that is a part of your daily conversation.
Right.
So I think when we look at this, and you think the other officer talked about the name of the unit, I don't think we name units that empowers those officers that are part of those.
All right, I'm going to bring in Dr. Warren on this because you've actually seen parts of the video. Does it reflect this idea of groupthink where they stand apart, standing together? Help us better understand what you saw in that regard. And what would you like to see with police reforms moving forward in the wake of this horrific death?
You know, one of the things that we have in Memphis, and I think the reason everyone's so sad, is that we've got an incredibly high murder rate. 2 years ago, we had 347 murders in our city, and we have a population of 630,000. To compare that to New York, where it's slightly less than 500 with a population of 8.6 million. So what our citizens want our police to be able to do is to help stop the murders and to stop people from killing each other. That's what this unit was initially designed to do. But as you look at this tape, what you can see is things got out of control and there weren't checks and balances that automatically kicked in. I know today our police chief said that we're doing a top-down search on and evaluation of this unit to see what we can do to correct this deficiency and to try to make sure it never happens again.
And the police chief also mentioned that the department lacks supervisors. Sergeant Dorsey, what do you make of that issue that she raised?
I certainly believe had there been a sergeant, someone with some tenure on that police department there on scene, they would have properly managed that use of force. And so while they're conducting evaluations, they need to also look at psychological evaluations. Police officers generally are given a psychological evaluation when they're hired, and never again unless and until they're involved in a deadly use of force. And so officers need to have their head cracked open every couple of years, looked into, and make sure that everything is working properly. And if you find that you have an officer who doesn't have the temperament, the skill set, and or experience to do that job, there is no harm or shame in getting them off the police department, or at the very least tying them to the desk, as a police chief can do.
All right. Thank you to you all. We appreciate it.